at this point in a comprehensive plan process, it does, people do tend to drop out. It's the weather, the nighttime, the season. And, people just do just something that happens. So thank you for coming and making that effort. Appreciated. Drew is here tonight, and Drew is going to tell you a little bit about the survey, which he's closed off, and the community profile, and a little bit housing.
Yeah, we'll go through all the demographic information before we dig into the specifics, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to let him start off, and then I sent you, and there are copies here of this vision, goals, opportunities, and actions. And it's really my first cut at, I didn't give you a ton of background information. You've already seen that, or you already know that. It's really, well, what are we going to do about what we want to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I realized that I sent it out today. So you're not going to have a great chance to have digested it. So take some time and do that, but we'll talk about it tonight. And it's a first draft of kind of pulling together what we've done so far. My take on it anyway. So let's personal. And we've had, by the way, we have had, this is our 6th committee meeting, believe it or not. We started in May, actually.
Right.
And we also did a field walk, and we did our public meeting September 1st, just so, we've done a lot, and we've done this survey that I'm going to let Drew talk about. And so as we finish up the process, we'll want to do another public meeting where it's really an open house, and we don't have to do a lot of talking, just people can go around and look and see what we've done and give their comments. And then the last piece is giving a town board presentation, which would be like a little shortened summary of the whole thing. So that's kind of where we're at. And does anybody have any questions to start off?
I've had a lot on the general planning board, and that was different people already about zoning regulations and changing certain things which really need to be changed for the town to grow and get better. The other day, somebody wants to build a development, but the boundary line where they can't build houses on half-acre lots, they have to build on 1-acre lots. Well, they want to put 45 half acres of spots there, and it's so like it's down there, and one part can do it. Across the street, you can't do it. And then there's certain businesses in the town that want to sell their businesses, but part of it is commercial and a little part isn't. It's kind of like, and we're going to present that to the board question. Maybe we need to look at the zoning, they need to do some adjustments.
Right. I do think there are a few places that do need adjusting, and maybe there are a few more. And if zoning districts, are come down through the center or somewhere, they separate one lot, that's not advisable. And there may be places that we can fix that, move a boundary.
The example you're talking about, the town zoning or APA?
I think it's both. And the APA, maybe because the town's only different.
So see, you do talk about zoning in here, updating and maybe getting a grant.
Yes, and I talked to Karen. So Karen gave me all of her detailed definitions, all kinds of things that need to be addressed. And so I do have that. I didn't put it in here, but I have that. I think we've never really gotten to, this is the zoning map, and we've never really gotten to the area up in Lake Benaire where Tom had a development that he wanted, and that was also split. There was a problem with that, and the town can pursue, an application with the APA to change that zoning and make it consistent with the town zoning. But if it's not in the comprehensive plan, it probably will never happen. So we really need to make sure that we agree that we want to put that forth in here.
Okay. Do you have a sense, like how specific do we need to be? Is it good enough to say, we know there are issues, so in our report, for us to say that we know there are issues with zoning that need to be addressed. There are, I mean, give an example, but do we need to detail here that says, for this area, this is the current zoning, we think it should be this, or
Yes.
what's the right approach there?
I would say that some places you can be more general where, you know, like if you're saying if a zone bifurcates a lot. You know, in all places in the town, you know, have an initiative to correct that. That could be, you know, that could be a general recommendation. But in the case of Lake Vanier, I would want to be more specific. Because just saying, study it again, that's not gonna, you know, you really need to have some consensus that, yes, we'd like to put this forward. We think that this needs to be corrected and agree with the findings of the APA, which was that there was no environmental reason not to do it. But they didn't, they only heard the support of the people who said that they did not want it, right? They were worried about traffic and all that, whether it's warranted or not, they're the ones that spoke. You didn't have a lot of people who said, yes, let's do it. So we need to have a good, strong opinion in here about where you want to go with that, if you want to tackle it at all.
So in the absence of a bunch of people showing up to say to the APA, yes, this should happen, having the town comprehensive plan, this is kind of the voice of people represented. Is that?
It's a good foundation.
Yeah.
For that kind of stuff. From my experience, by the way, redoing the zoning typically is just as involved, if not more involved in this process.
That's
Yes.
But it definitely is cost wise.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I don't know why I have this opinion, but I think our zoning pretty much no longer makes any sense.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it needs I think it all needs to be looked at and adjusted.
Mhm.
I agree.
Since I've looked at it, which is 10 years now, I've never seen a PDD come from the planning board.
No, never. I've been on the board since 2005. Never.
I don't know.
I think there were attempts they were gonna do it, but then back to 2006, then the recession came and everything got to it.
You've never seen a what?
PDD, Plan Development District. It's a procedure in the zoning book that allows, there's probably a minimum acreage for I'll say a larger development to come in and build the case for essentially ignoring zoning and creating their own zoning setup for that property they want to develop. Housing developments, typically PDDs, where, or that might be zoned something else and they have a little convenience store out in the corner and it's not zoned for that, but the whole lot and they say, okay, we're gonna do this, and this, and this, and this. It's an extensive process. But what it does is it opens the door for a lot more innovative thinking and ingenuity for a piece of property,
Is that compatible with APA? Can that happen in?
It doesn't excuse you from the APA approvals by any means, but I don't know this, John, but my guess would be if a PVD was proposed and it was consistent with our master plan, I would think it would have a lot better chance of getting past APA.
So the answer to why don't you think that one of those has come up in the last 16 years? Do you think there's just not the demand for it, or they're not willing to take the expense or the effort to go through that process?
It could be, maybe the financial projections weren't worth it. I don't know.
Is there no provision right now in the zoning ordinance for PDD?
Yeah, there is.
Yes. So it's never just been utilized.
Almost back in 2000, like I said, before 2008, and recession came and it stopped. Housing market, everything gets went. And now they're coming back.
Yeah.
The same people that came to us. The Karen called me again today, because in other places, remember, vaguely, but it's the same thing that came up in 2007.
When, what's Tom's last name, the guy that was proposing that development, Tom,
Is it west?
no.
It's,
Well,
This is past Williams. Oh, I'm talking past Williams.
I suggested to him that he do a PDD, but he didn't want any part of it, I don't know why.
You know,
Town of Malta, it's practically all PDDs,
Yeah,
practically all of them. But you know, a place that would be appropriate would be downtown. You know, if you took the dilapidated buildings that we are aware of, and you know, got rid of them, this is one lot. You could do a PDD there that wouldn't, you wouldn't have to, deal with setbacks. Buildings could be clustered in a way that the zoning would normally say, no, you can't do that. Well, you can cluster them in a way, you can share drive, you can do all kinds of design features, like Jim said, that aren't in your zoning ordinance. So, yeah, it's,
in the last couple of months, I've been throwing a few slings of mud on the wall, they're not really sticking, but they're not being laughed at. One in particular was down on a that whole area.
yes,
And I think this may be your idea, or maybe I heard it someplace else, and then put an RFP together to a developer or whoever it would go out to and say, hey, this is kind of what we think should go here. What do you want to do with it? And then they could spend the money to do a plan, and then the town would be in a position to say, nah, it's not quite it. Or yeah,
that's right.
and then you make it a sweet deal. I know you mentioned pilots in there or some other base, so that if it's a marginal business that may or may not make it, you take away some of that risk. Now, where would the money come from? I don't know.
Well, there are programs that that encourage that, and it's done quite a bit. I mean, if the town really wants to make it happen, you gotta buy the land yourself.
Yeah.
I know when we lived in Schenectady, there was a program to. Yeah, and that was, you saw immediate.
Not all in line, right? Probably 15, 20 years ago.
No, they just were with better neighborhoods and became better community neighborhoods, and can they still exist? There's also the Albany Community Land Trust, which is very active, and there's a whole program out there for claiming what they're referring to now as zombie property. So, you know, there's lots of things that you can do in order to assist in the redevelopment of that area. Unfortunately, those programs aren't very well geared towards demolition and new, more about rehabilitation, particularly in downtown areas. But you could put together, work with development consultant and put together a funding package that could work for a developer. For constructing some types of multi-units within that space. There's all kinds of incentive packages from 0.25% interest through community land bank and other things.
Well, one problem I see here, and I think it has to do with our demographics, is because hardly any of this stuff ever happens here. A lot of people are automatically against it right from the get-go. Whereas in the community where there have been dozens of developments and the residents are used to the process, they're used to working with the planning board, zoning boards and so on to make sure the project is palatable. You know, they don't automatically say, no, we don't want that. They're willing to listen. And I think that's a hurdle that we'd have to overcome here. It's very conservative. I'm sure you all know that, but
I think that, you know, people have to be aware of the cost of doing nothing. And you've seen it.
yeah,
And go to Fort Edward, to Hudson Falls, they try and they try and they try and they try. Corinth has had so many revitalization efforts, Ticonderoga. It's very, very difficult to do unless you make a big splash, you make a big effort. And that is something like I talked about, you know, come up with a couple of big ideas and follow through with them. And there are always alternatives, but you in order to get Drew was just telling me throughout the survey that we put together and it's done with restaurant. Well, we can't make a restaurant happen. So we have to create actions that will encourage or attract restaurateurs to come to the community. And to do that, you have to have big ideas like you're talking about, where the town, and this is effort. This is, you've got to hire somebody, you know, to make this happen for you. This is effort to, you know, put a package together where the town buys it, leases it back, you know, puts out an RFP, leases it back to them, whatever it is. But it is effort. But if nothing happens, if you don't put forth some bigger ideas, then nothing happens. I mean, could anybody believe that Molly's in downtown Corinth, that site, would still be vacant after all this time? After that fire? What? Downtown, beautiful section of Corinth?
It's going on 10 years now.
Yes, it's
Ever since I
phenomenal.
moved here, it's been gone.
So if there's a cost to doing nothing, so I applaud you for, you know, going a little bigger here and thinking about it within the theme. And, you know, we can talk about this later, of the vision for the community, that it's part of the vision is having a destination downtown. We'll anchor it and it will attract people to some restaurants and come to downtown on a daily basis. So let's go back to your question, John, which was, do we need to get specific? I would say yes. If you know of places that you do want, you know, if the planning board has areas that they specifically want to change, let's get it in here with as much detail as possible. Otherwise, it kind of does go nowhere. You know, I call it do good, avoid evil. It just, you know,
At the county board of supervisors meeting, let's do it, it's Friday, last Friday.
Yeah.
You know, they're in the process of funding theirs, the new master plan. And one of the supervisors said, something like, I understand that this is really just a Christmas wish list, and you know, you do this plan and then there's no money to fund any of it, so why bother doing it? That was I was brought up to the county board of supervisors, because the county is considering redoing theirs. In fact, I think they've already
I
started.
think they did, they were about to put out an RFP.
Yeah,
But you know, it's that's kind of an ignorant thing that person said, because there's a ton of funding. And I will tell you that I applied for funding or reading to redo the zoning. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I did that in the summer, in the July. Department of State has a smart growth program. We originally applied for the comprehensive plan. You know, it was so little money. They in the pot was such a small amount of money that like 10 projects across New York State were going to get funded. So our chances were minimal. But I did apply for the zone, which follows this. So hopefully we will know within 2 weeks. The state will announce those awards, and we'll know whether there is award money in there.
That'd be nice.
I got my fingers crossed. No,
The application through the CFA, is that
Yes.
the time?
yes,
Yeah.
back in the end of July.
Good.
So they're typically announced in the next first 2 weeks of December, and we'll know something. So that's outstanding. But that's proactive, and Gene wanted to do that, so we're getting there. So yes, so we really should talk about, spend a little time talking about those sites and what exactly we want to say about it. But I'm going to turn it over to Drew to give us a quick, a quick patch of information on the survey, et cetera. I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, so we use SurveyMonkey to distribute a survey. We put it on the website, it's distributed via email to throughout the community. We actually received over 300 respondents, which we thought was pretty good, much more than what we anticipated. I won't say that it was all useful information, a lot of griping about nothing in particular or something very particular. So, you know, of course, that's very common when you put something and you request information from people that they all have their own very particular thing. I would say that some of the information that I got out of it was quite interesting. Apparently your community is almost split right down the middle about how welcoming you are. Half of them say, you know, it's a great place to visit, it's a great place to live, it's a great place to be, everybody's very nice, and the others, people say, well, yeah, it's, you know, it's very nice if you live here, but maybe not so welcoming to other people. You know, we'll begin to summarize all of this information as we, you know, really close it out and sort out all the 300 respondents. Some of them are very, very brief, some of them are very, very long. I would say that the key thing that there's any one thing to take away, it was that everybody wants a restaurant. I think we saw that through the public meeting, but you know, when you consistently ask people, what is it you think this community needs? It needs a place to eat, it needs a place to gather, it needs a place for the community together. That is really the key thing that came out of it. But you know, your opinions were very deeply divided among, you know, who you are, what you should be, and what's important. And that makes it good because, you know, there's no consensus about most things.
Are you able to tell with the responses if they're unique responses? Is it an IP? I'm just wondering.
It's ID track.
Okay, yeah. Just because I could picture if somebody really had an axe to grind, they could fill out a survey 10 times.
There's somebody who's very, very upset about access to his driveway. And you know,
Pretty easy to sort out.
Gave her, I don't know how long. It was too much.
You tend to look responsible.
I'm a good time to.
He might have put it in a lot, because he's driving, seeing everything else paved, and we've got about 50, they'll ruin your car.
Oh.
We don't want it.
Secondly.
Go to back.
Oh, yeah, it's mine.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
we're over on
Yeah, I left
Luzerne.
you, we don't have a voicemail.
Oh,
It is.
I know. That's what.
Used to be speed bumps on there.
That's what I go to the state, it's a
Where-
big year
where?
to drop the speed limit from 55 to 30. Isn't that ridiculous for an 8 mile?
Really?
Go 55 miles an hour.
oh, wait,
You should ever drive there, you should ever drive to 9N,
oh.
my little street by the firehouse. The speed limit was 55 because the cops didn't get them the ticket.
On Rose was 50?
It was.
To be honest, like, I can't even believe it's 30 in our development, really, I mean.
Not that it stopped them, but. And they put the thing up that says how fast you're going, everybody slows down, even though it doesn't need to. They think it does.
Yeah.
There's a chance. Cameras everywhere now. Yeah.
So I think the important thing is that, the survey went out to a ton of people had access to it. And they were able to vet their feelings about the town, and so you've done your due diligence as a committee. And we have the information that we will report back on when it's compiled. And so I think that that's in addition to the public meetings, you've done due diligence on the project.
Generally speaking, are there constructive suggestions?
you were in between.
Really?
There were very few things on which you could say, that's a really great idea, or I've never heard that before.
Sure. I got that sense when looking at the questions, it's some of these answers must have been addressed, or issues must have been addressed before. Bike lanes on 9N, things like that. Yeah.
So you want to tell us a little about the demographics that we put together?
Oh, yeah, so I'll to start off, I'll let you know that the key data reference that I used for this was number one, the US Census, as well as what's known as the American Community Survey, which is a 5-year survey, and it breaks things down into much more specific information. I also used Lake George Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. Honestly, whatever other information I could find. The most interesting data point that I found was actually there's a website called AirDNA. And it's actually intended for people who want to invest into Airbnbs. But it actually has a accounting of total number of Airbnbs by zip code, so it's not 100% within the town. And it had it at its peak at 143. 143
Here,
here in Lake Luzerne.
oh my god.
Yeah, they just said at a town board meeting, it's like 145, I think, that.
Wow.
Those are the ones that are registered.
Right.
No, the only ones that are registered, so I called the treasurer's office, and I spoke to Swan. Michael Swan. is that his name?
Yeah.
And he only has 50 registered.
Okay.
Airbnb.
That's interesting, because that's up 15 from about 3 months ago.
Right, and I also spoke to Karen in the zoning, and she said that you guys had determined that there was maybe 86. So this actually tracks activity by quarter. So that was a really interesting data point. So going through some of this demographic information, first thing, you lost about 8% of your population over the last 10 years. You are now down to 3,079. This is the lowest population it's been since before 2000. So you were actually losing residents, and whereas you may have been gaining residents around the 2010 area. The median age of residents in the area has also grown. So in 2010, it was 43, it's now 51. So your population is also generally aging. And this is more than 1.5% greater than Glens Falls and greater than New York State. Other interesting information, we're losing a bunch of kids, right? The population is aging, there's far less young people. There's 15.8 or 223 children under the age of 18. I'd
How
say
much was that? Sorry.
15.8% or 223 children under the age of 18, according to the US Census data.
223.
Mhm.
That's, well, we probably have about 300 kids or so in the district, right?
Your current number in the district as of 2022, I didn't get the exact number, but steadily over the last 10 years, your school enrollment has declined 44%. That's huge. So you are losing lots and lots of young people. You do have some more younger people between ages of 0 and 9 than you do between ages of 10 and 19. I'm actually going to pass this around. I printed this out because it's very telling. Now, this is a community survey. It's based on estimates. Do you notice that there's a huge white gap right in there? So between ages 18 and 24, according to the survey, zero population. So what's happening to people when they graduate high school, and where are they going? Are they staying? Are they going to different places? Are they graduating and going to college? Are they college students or just graduated high school and just not responding to this survey? Now, I tracked this against the US Census records because this is the ACS 5-year. Now, the largest population group that you have by 4-year age group is 25 to 29, which is kind of interesting. So they start to come back. But those two numbers drive the total number of 10 by 10-year or by 4-year, they seem to jive that. You just don't have people who live in this community that are ages 18 to 24. And the first thing that came to my mind when I read that information is, well, no wonder you don't have people who are going to work in your restaurant. Who are those people who are going to work those jobs? The income, those building block jobs, the entry level jobs, the thing that you do to support yourself while you're going to school or something like that. So that was a really big tell for me. The only other thing that I think is particularly telling here is, and I don't think it's particularly telling, is that you're 97% white.
Yes, I just said that,
So there's not a whole lot of diversity. I love looking at demographic information because it's kind of funny. Apparently you had one Black person that made approximately $101,000 that lived here for a total of 2 years and then moved away. So there's just like a straight up and down arrow on this record information. Housing. So Lake Luzerne has a total of 2,343 housing units. That total number has grown consistently with over 400 new units over the last 10 years, so you're growing. At least in terms of total housing units. 1,602 units are occupied by households, where all the persons who occupy a house, it's their primary place of residence. That's what that means. It's not necessarily an Airbnb, it's not a rental, it's not. Their primary home is in Florida and their secondary homes here. Could be the other way around. But 68.4, that leaves 31.6 or 741 units that are either vacant or seasonal. So that's actually a fairly large number.
Third, basically.
Basically a third. The total number of owner occupied houses decreased by 90. So even though you have new units, they're not necessarily going to people who claim it as their primary residence. And of those, 19.1% of homeowners are mortgage burdened, meaning more than 30% of their income is going directly towards their mortgage, not counting heating or taxes or anything like that. That number isn't particularly bad as you compare it to, state and county. But you also live in New York State, and New York State is one of the most mortgage and rent burden communities. So I wouldn't necessarily compare it to New York State because, well, quite frankly, if you're comparing yourself to New York City, I think we're a little off base, right? You expect to pay that much rent. The total number of rental occupied units actually is way all over the place. And I actually didn't know what accounted for that. And one year there was between 50 and 60 rental units that dropped off. And in another year, it increased 143, which I imagine was maybe a sizable development that got created. It was between 2020 and 21. However, of those, 77.4, 3/4 of those residents are rent burdened. So that means more than 30% of their total household income is going towards rent. Now, there was a direct correlation so that if I was able to overlap the total number of housing rental units and the total cost of those units, they're just parallel and they're highly variable. So what that tells me is that the more units you have, the lower the price becomes, the more accessible it comes to more people. 77.4% is more than, first off, seems to be a little draft. Let's see what happens. But 54% across New York State, including all of New York City. You were actually the highest in all of Warren County in terms of total rent burden households. So that's really telling.
The highest percentage.
Highest percentage. The largest number of housing units were constructed between 1980 and 89, and most of the houses, or 57%, were constructed prior to 1979. A lot of them are newer homes. So we actually like to see this demographic information. 1978, 1979 is when lead-based paint was eliminated in the United States. So that means that probably have less lead poison kids. And that is a CDBG statistics for healthy homes. Yeah.
Positive.
Yeah. 71% of homeowners moved to Lake Luzerne in the last 20 years. 71%. And with 40% of those homeowners purchasing their home between 2000 and 2009. So there's a lot of people that have moved here just in the last 20 years. Only 11% or 183 households has resided in Lake Luzerne for more than 30 years. This is households, it's not individuals, so keep that in mind.
That seasonal rental statistic skews all this stuff.
It certainly does.
Yeah,
Although homeowners does refer to people who claim this as their primary residence.
yeah.
So the last category that we assessed was the economy. So the employment rate in Lake Luzerne is 59.2%, which is higher than the Warren County rate, which is only 57.2, so you're only about 2% difference. The largest employer segment is educational services, healthcare, and social assistance. A lot of public employees. School is one of the largest employers. Aside from that, retail trade is 11%, construction is 10.7. People work on average 39 hours, and commute 30 minutes. So a lot of people are probably just crossing the mountain going to Glens Falls, Kingsbury, they aren't traveling particularly far. And 91% of them drive to work because there's no other form of transportation. Most of you are white collar, 71.43. And blue collar employees are only 29%.
Guess that.
60% are private sector, 23 local, state, and local government employees, 6.5 for nonprofit, 10.6 are self-employed, either in a incorporated or unincorporated business. Doesn't mean, so that means that they could just do it, have a DBA, they could have a, sell on eBay, type thing.
What was that percentage?
10.6%. Your total median income peaked in 2013 when the median income was $73,000 annual, and it floored in 2015 to 53,000. It's now up to almost 60,000 in 2019. So the total amount of money that people in this community make has decreased by over $10,000. This is about 90% of the amount of
$1,000 where are we, is it just year by year?
So this is
inflation adjusted. We're looking at 73,000 in 2013, the same as.
So this is based on the 5-year ACS data. This came from the Lake George Champlain Regional Tourism, Regional Planning Council. And it's based on the last survey, which was done in 2020.
Okay, so it's today's dollars. Probably.
And I'm not going to compare $2020 to $2022.
So that was big about inflation and what happened in this intervening years.
Right.
That if it's the same, if it's self-reported as, I make $73,000 in 2013, and then the same person said, no, I'm gonna make 60,000 now. It's actually, the hit is even bigger than what you just did, right? Because of the dollars go by, which is
Probably not adjusted.
that's what I'm thinking.
Inflation.
Well, we're dealing with the closing of the mill. I don't remember the year. In Corinth. That close of that mill was a major hit. They were well-paying jobs, a lot of them.
That was 2003.
Was it?
2000,
It's been a while.
06.
maybe 6.
I think 2006, yeah. So you might be seeing some of the impact from that.
That might have had effect, we're talking about the housing bill itself, so it's not.
Yeah.
It has to be all close.
Right.
You had after 9/11, you had people hightailing it out of the city up here. Just like with COVID, they'd come up and doing the Airbnbs, everything shifts when there's a big cultural thing shift. Everything locally shifts as well, so probably some of that is reflected, I would think, from.
As well as professionals and other people who are living in this community that then retire. So that's probably going to be a big part of that as well. People who, are at the end of their career, they were high earners because,
And that's a big part of the population.
Yeah.
While the total median income has declined, poverty rates are at a 10-year low at 5.1%. This is again as of 2010-20, and they peaked in 2015, reaching a high of just 9.4. Another interesting statistic, and this one really stood out to me, according to the American Community Survey, 0% of the population 65 or older is below the poverty line. And only 9% of the children under 18 are below the poverty line, which is significantly lower than the statewide percentages. And I threw in just another statistics here, which is what's known as the low to moderate income index, which is at 42.53%. So you become CDBG, community development block grant eligible when your community is at 51% or more of low poverty.
And this matters because there are grants that the town is going after. One in particular is to fix the water system, the municipal water system. And because the median income is just above this 51%.
51%.
You can't get a grant. You can't get enough points to score well enough to get these grants at DEC. And Jean and I are working on, with the Cedarwood, we're working on several other ways of going about this, including rural development, which is a USDA federal program. But again, you know, you're just above that amount. And there's a lot of communities like Fort Ann, same way. They're like $127 above it. It just throws them off the threshold. They can't get the grant portion, which would enable them to actually do the project. So low interest rate grants are great, but sometimes communities can't do it. You know, this project is about $2.5 million. Well, okay, how are you going to do it? So we're working on bringing in some other means of getting it done. We're exploring means in early December to get it done. But that's why it matters what Drew's talking about, this median income and from the American Community Survey. It's a critical feature. I mean, you're not a distressed community. Corinth is, right? And you will see them get a lot more money with remember they got their sewer project, and that was a phenomenal amount of money. Corinth is a distressed community. They can qualify. You can't.
The only way that you can qualify is by identifying a specific target area and then doing a survey to determine those people are of low to moderate income. And that's extremely challenging. We did a driving tour of Lake Luzerne a little over a month ago. And, you know, those distressed houses and, you know, the dilapidated homes, the ones you see, are often right next to the really nice ones. It's very mixed. So there's no very specific target area where you would say, I am going to serve this particular population. And by the way, this all comes from 1960s HUD guidelines. This is all federal dollars that it originates from. They do use terms, they are really targeted towards populated areas where there's very, very low people.
So the complication in Luzerne is that water line goes up to Pierpoint Beach, right, into that whole area, which is wealthier, right? There's higher incomes up in there. So and you don't have to be a seasonal resident, right? You're counted if you are a resident.
Right.
So those incomes count. So it's not, I don't even know if they did the individual survey. They may have done that and tried it that way, and it didn't work because the incomes were too high. So it's extremely,
right?
what?
Wasn't it close? Like
Yes, it was close.
3,000.
But close they could cut it because,
Yeah.
you know, we got some feedback from the Environmental Facilities Corp, which is a DEC grant. And we asked for feedback. Why is this grant why is Luzerne not getting this grant after 3-4 years of Cedarwood putting in for it? And they said the pot got smaller, they got larger, and there are so many communities that are so dire. They are under consent orders with the EC, and those go first. And you're not there. So Luzerne falls somewhere down in the below, you know, not the neediest cases, let's just put it that way.
You know, we've got our Cadis engineering working on one or two of them right now.
Yeah, so the lead,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and that's a different grant.
That's sort of the
Is it?
income survey.
Well, that'll be interesting.
So-
Yeah.
We're hoping some people respond, we're hoping some don't.
Well, yeah. But that's why these statistics matter, and Drew and I are going to put together a whole report that will go in the plan itself, and you'll get a copy of that. Just going to, and the survey as well.
I don't know what he has, but I spoke to the school superintendent last summer, Mr. Owen. He is required, he told me, to keep some data on, I think he said graduates from the last 2 years. Does that ring a bell? So I never accessed it. I never followed up to see what he has, but he may be able to fill in part of that gap for you.
I only know that because we discussed that in our state meetings. That's part of one of the.
Try to figure out what happens to those kids after they graduate.
My guess is if they cross the mountain, they either go off to college or they cross the mountain where they can.
And he would have that data, like if they're going to if they're off to college, they've moved out of state, if they've taken a job in a different, area.
Acceptable, there's that confidential information.
We actually have a meeting on my, confidential. I don't think I can ask. Yeah.
The same county meeting I was at, this is a tangent, but I think it's sort of relevant. The county meeting last Friday, was on the agenda was the budget. And somebody was there from an organization that is in charge of passing out scholarships. I don't remember who the group was, but they were. She was supporting the county budget to do that. And one of the changes they're going to make is they're going to start figuring out a way to pass out money to kids that aren't college bound. To put up scholarships for kids that maybe go to a welding school or want to go to.
Great.
Boy, I thought that was great.
Luzerne has actually a lot of scholarships that do that. I mean, my son goes to Valley for electrical, and that's like one of the huge, they does a nice scholarship for that. And they have other ones that you want to trade. There's Joe Hinman's. Luzerne does have quite a bit of those, which is nice.
It's good to hear.
The question is, when you're starting out, you're making $15 an hour. Where are you gonna live? Are you gonna live in Lake Luzerne, or are you gonna live in Glens Falls paying, $600 a month rent for a home?
Well, that was part of the point of this lady too, was you're making $15 an hour, you can't afford to pay a $500 bill to go to welding school. Or $500 to go to a tractor trailer training school, something like that. Which either of those professions these days will put you in a pretty decent income bracket once you get the certifications and get a job.
Right. So are you done with that?
I'm done with demographics.
Okay.
Was there a demographic, and maybe I missed it, about retired people percentage?
Total number of people aged 65 or above is 35%.
You said they make more than, they're not, none of those, the 35% are underneath the poverty.
That's correct. According to that statistic. Now, could you be rent burdened or mortgage burdened, or he's just above that poverty line? Absolutely.
It is the poverty one,
Not for this demographic. That,
It changes per demographic area.
so you would be within the Glens Falls metro area.
I was just saying, like, when you said 243 kids under the age of 18, I was like, we hear all this time. The school's got more kids than that, but we forget that we're just looking at Luzerne, we're not looking at Hadley, so great, and all that, so that's. Because I just said,
That's why I was like,
I just texted the superintendent secretary, and I'm like, how many kids are in Luzerne? Because I said 752, they're 750.
and it's like the poverty as well, it's like
It's
I gotta keep remembering, we're just focusing on Luzerne, and it's like, I know, just being in the school, there's a lot more poverty
Right.
than that, so Like I keep thinking, you know, thinking it, that there's other areas, there's a bigger picture than just.
But
for-
the graphic that, you know, was on the first page, one I distributed is for Hadley Luzerne School, so. You
Yeah.
have lost 44% of your population consistently between 2000 and 2010, and then again between 2010 and 2012.
Now, isn't that weird, because they just had, like, they had to hire more, they had to put in more teachers into kindergarten, because last year's, it's like the numbers were up, so.
So I Yeah, people like moving in and moving out, I guess, even moving out of the district.
So there's more,
Right.
there's more kids 0 to 6 now than.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes, I understand
Yeah.
kindergarten.
So it's kind of like a little bump in the road.
We get that playground.
Well, exactly. It informs and drives your decisions, right, to anchor more families in the community and families. Young families, they want a good playground and they want a beach. I mean, you've got so many of the ingredients for families to want to be here. And you've got to start removing the obstacles to that. And providing incentives for them to come. And Queensbury's always been very good at that, right? I mean, they really have. And any day, if you go over to Hubby Park, anybody know where Hubby is?
Packed.
Yeah.
Packed. What? I mean, really? What did they do?
Yeah.
It's by the house, Queensbury, is that? Is that tired? Yeah. Yeah, the playground is right now. Yes, but I mean, it used to be phenomenal. It's phenomenal. A use and destination for people. And so, I mean, you only have to look short distance to see the impact from something small like that has. And so these statistics are just statistics, but they inform you about, like I said, you don't want to let nothing happen. You don't want to say, oh, well, you know, because most of the people around you are going to say, whatever, oh, well. And you can't do that.
It would be great for you to have something out here.
Yes, I actually like this better than downtown. But, you know, down at the Bicentennial Park, I actually like this site better. And imagine if this site had some senior housing, some trails, walking trails for them, the connection to the senior center. And you also had a playground component where you mix the age groups up and it'd be pretty neat. You could even have a childcare center there at some point. But you had the parking. And if you have more festivals here, like we talked about blending from across the street over from the ice cream place. The playground is, and you know, don't get me wrong, I actually think you could use 2 playgrounds. You could use a smaller playground down with some pieces down in Bicentennial Park. Now, remind me, is there anything there? Is there a swing center? Nothing's there.
Just up at the park.
Yeah.
By the beach, there's a couple swings.
Yeah, so that could be, you know, you could enhance that. It doesn't have to be just one place. Just, you know, we talked about the trails and organizing the trails, you know, tell people where to go. And, you know, I see people all the time from Luzerne actually up in, or maybe I told you this, the Stony Creek trails up there, the farm, what's it called? Steam Mountain Farm. Has anybody been there?
I have.
You guys? Yeah, you have? Yeah. You guys? Yeah. It's phenomenal.
It's great.
It's like, you know, Warren County developed it under this first wilderness heritage trail business. And you kind of, what's this gonna be? I park and I with my friend and I couldn't believe the facility. It's so beautiful and you go in and out of open fields and the woods and brooks and it is, so it was an old farm.
Is that O'Keefe? O'Keefe's farm?
No.
Different one?
Dean.
Haven't heard of that.
You literally turn, I'm trying to think.
So the Stony Creek Inn?
No, so you're gonna go to the next one, past the park and take that first right, and it's your first left.
Thank you.
And you can go both sides of the road.
Yes.
in both sides of the road. The other one, the one on the right hand side is more of a mountain to climb.
Okay,
And the other one's more of just a nice walk. It's got wooden bridges and benches to sit on.
And people go there.
So that's what, it was created by the Boy Scouts. Like there's signs up there that say the Boy Scouts host. Like,
I don't know, I think the
Really?
family originally was targeted, or they wanted to do something.
there's actually, you have to climb up these stairs, wooden stairs up this rock.
yeah,
Like we weren't any hikers, and we went there, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And there was no cell phone, it was just like.
makes
Yeah.
Not off the rock.
It's the poverty area, it's the poverty, the number that you can get for the area. Sure, this is the one. I know you said there wasn't one for Lake Luzerne.
Oh,
Poverty level.
what the poverty line is for the Glens Falls metro area. I'm not sure, but I can look at them.
If you put that energy direction,
There are parts of the census that are still not released, is that correct?
Yes, there's full parts of the census.
It's just like, not, you're like, I look all the time and I'm like, well, why? No, you're not there. So, you know, our government, it's 2022. I guess we can blame it on COVID. Here's another thing we can blame on COVID, but. So we'll find that statistic out for you.
In the past, 6 or 8 months, town board has gotten several complaints about the Buttermilk Falls area. Summer activity up there, it's not particularly desirable. And we have TEC coming to talk to the town board about that at our December meeting. Town owns the road. So that's the only leverage that we would have to do something with that area.
Oh,
But I think DEC is looking for help to make that area a nice place again. I don't know. That would see something that we might want to consider as a town objective someday.
yeah, I think that should be put in the. Yeah, yeah.
You're not talking about falls as, you're talking river road,
Yeah,
because there's a difference. So
Yes,
Buttermilk
I-
Falls in
I-
river road.
Is there a number for affordable housing for low income? Like if somebody's gonna put a development in houses, I mean, we could, I don't know if we could do this, but as a planning board to the town board, if they want to do this 50 house development, say you have to have affordable housing so that you can, you know, you make them 2 out price, what good is this gonna do for the community? And I kind of think that's what they would do is development. Is there a number that, as you know of?
Yeah, there's lots of different numbers, but it depends on what the funding source is. So, you know, typically, if you're going to do a multi-housing development, you're going to have some public funding because the cost of new construction versus the return on investment for creating affordable housing is minuscule. So they help supplement it. It's typically between 50 and 80% of annual income.
So take a look at Lake George. And I don't pretend to even know the details of this, but in Waterslide World, where Waterslide World was, they're tearing all that down, and that is gonna have a component for affordable housing. And I don't know what the formula is or, you know, number of units, but might be worthwhile asking.
Is that a PDD?
No,
Because it's
no,
gonna
I
have multi,
don't know.
what I saw in the paper, it's gonna have multi-uses.
Yes, it is. It is. It's a good question.
Dennis
We should-
Dickinson is really one of the prime movers of that thing.
But I imagine it's subsidized, you know, the big thing in Lake George is having affordable housing for young people, and they're looking at all different ways, but.
Now, that's,
Drew said, you can't make a lot of money as a developer off it unless it's subsidized by some program.
Yeah, the cost of new construction is just astronomical. So, New York State Home Funds is one of the more common ones, Affordable Housing Corporation. They're all live under the big umbrella of New York State Homes and Community.
So if they don't want, developer doesn't want to do that, they just want to sell it off, build houses, whatever they want to charge it.
As long as they're not using any type of public funding or public lending programs, they can do whatever they want. But typically the funding program will limit them. And frankly, what's the point of not doing that? You know,
one of the advantages of the PDD from the town's perspective is that there's a PDD application allows the town to request things. Like,
You know,
yeah, we want to build this PDD and we want 10 acres turned into a park.
because we kind of talked about that, I mean,
Yeah,
you would say that too.
they don't have to agree to it,
Right.
you know, but that's typically part of the process. From a land use planning standpoint, PDEs are kind of popular because they can ask the developer to concentrate in this area and leave the solvent, concentrate in this area and leave the solvent. So if, you know, it gets around all the minimum lot sizes and all that, you know, they might stuff houses on a quarter-acre lot, but they leave 40 acres completely undisturbed. Right, or they have to build a park, or they have to build
Trails.
trails, or a senior center, or something. It opens the dialogue for give and take. It's an old concept. I studied it in college, so it's really old.
Still relevant, definitely still relevant. Did you find out anything about the Adirondack Housing Trust? Because that's another way of,
I'm so confused about that because I sat on a session with Bruce Bajenski, who runs the HAPAC Housing Assistance Program in Essex County.
Yeah.
I know very well. And he did a whole presentation on land trusts. And he in fact runs that organization. The organization, which includes Bill Johnson. Is actually administered by HAPAC. And he told me that there was something going on where Essex, Clinton, and Warren counties weren't necessarily jiving together. They each wanted to do their own thing. So I was unclear about what the outcome of that was. And we tended to call Bill and ask what
it's a real skill.
yeah, so that, having a Adirondack Land Trust, now, generally what the Adirondack Land Trust would do is purchase up property. And then create basically 99-year leases on the property and throw rehabilitation, redevelop the property. So it's not new construction, they're not going to construct anything new, but they will rehabilitate properties. And it needs to be forever maintained as affordable at whatever rate they're. It's 80%.
So it's been pretty successful in the Adirondacks here and there, but Betty Little was one of the launchers of it. But I would say in the last 15 years, it hasn't exactly taken off. It's just kind of going along, and I don't know, it's hard to find out why that's true, but it is a tool for a community to use to take these houses that are what you call ghost houses?
The zombie homes.
Sorry. Zombies are not ghosts, that's, I hear. So, zombie houses and houses that have been abandoned where you can come in and, turn them into, usable low-income housing. It's a pretty nice tool, but it is very complicated and you do all have to work together. And there is an Adirondack Housing Trust that is, working on this and, so we'll find out more about that, try to get to the bottom of where they're at and what their problem is.
Would you like to jump out?
Yes. That'd be great.
All right. So I expanded some things here. This is where all my notes were that I was looking for. So the mortgage burden homes is 19.1% in Lake Luzerne. And that's actually lower than the Warren County average of 27.3 and the New York State at 27%. But this rent burden houses, that really stood out to me. Rent burden houses. So these are people who are renting homes that contribute more than 30% of their total household income of all individuals towards rent. 77.4%. This is compared to 48.2% in Warren County and 53.3% in New York State. So you're way up there. Lake Luzerne has the highest number of rent burden homes in Warren County and is 14% higher than the next highest community, which is Horton.
Wow.
So
Now, might that be skewed again by the summer rentals, or is this strictly primary residence?
primary residence.
So our rent in town is too high.
So that's what's interesting. Your average rent is just over $1,000.
That's how I take it.
My nephew's renting a little tiny place and like, been out for like tour road and stuff, you know, I'm like, get out of my mortgage.
Well, So the other towns that was smaller rentals and we're renting houses or something.
We're renting houses, we don't have apartments. Oh, yeah.
Wanting to rent a house versus a little apartment.
There's all things that could skew all of these things. That's probably one of the biggest ones. This is where I have my air DNA information. So the total number of short-term rentals peaked in Q3 of 2022 at 143 active rentals. So there's currently in this quarter 98 active rentals for Q4 of 2022. But over the last 10 years, 143 active rentals in Lake Luzerne. Of those, 48% are listed with Airbnb, 24 are listed with VRBO, 28 with both. So you're actually tied for 5th most short-term rentals in Warren County, behind only Lake George, North Creek, Bolton, and Chestertown. You're actually tied with Queensbury. And this is again based on zip code of 18 zip codes in Warren. So again, I had a hard time. I wanted to compare this to total number of housing units in the community, which was at 6.6% of your homes are in Airbnbs at present, but it's not a valuation because one zip code and the other one is municipal boundaries. So you were actually in the top 4 if you were to use that metric, but that's not a fair metric. So strengths and assets. Your total number of single family houses have grown. It's great. So you have more homes. They're fairly new. The total number of rental units peaked in 2020, so prices have come down. So again, we have that correlation. And most houses were constructed after 1980, so they're fairly new. They're fairly modern. For the most part, you probably don't need to worry about knob and tube wiring. You don't need to worry about lead-based paint. There might still be asbestos, but that's a different story. Lots of homeowners moved to Lake Luzerne in the last 20 years. You have a fairly, in terms of who's been here and who's coming here over the last 20 years, people have found Lake Luzerne to be an attractive place to live, decided that this is going to be their place of primary residence. It's a great indicator. Some other things that you may or may not know about, our good friends at Rebuilding Together, Saratoga County has programs, housing rehabilitation and other programs in which it includes Warren County as part of its service area. So some brief background information. New York State created something called rural preservation corporations. The entire purpose of rural preservation corporations were to serve county areas. They get an annual allocation from the state, and their job is to direct housing dollars to individual communities. And for some reason, when they created this program in the 1980s, Warren County opted out. I don't know why, but they opted out. So most recently, Rebuilding Together Saratoga County, which has a very active and well-beloved program, has expanded their services to include Warren County, with an eye on the fact that they include Warren County along with Washington County and Saratoga County. So if they receive $500,000 in which they can rehabilitate between 14 and 20 units, those are a total number of units spread throughout all of Warren County, all of Saratoga County, all of Washington County. Some of their programs include what's referred to as access programs. So access programs are for veterans, people on Medicaid or that are disabled, and other older adults that need accessibility features. They need ramps, they need access to their bathroom, maybe they need other things in order to continue living in their house. They also have mobile home replacement programs as well as affordable home ownership, housing rehabilitation for single family homes. Also, the city of Glens Falls, actual city of Glens Falls, not Warren County, does run a first time home buyer program that serves the entire county. So, you guys should be aware that these programs exist.
That includes us.
That includes you.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just the city.
So how do you go about getting credit for that?
What's that?
How do you go about doing something to take advantage of that?
It's like an individual or in a town.
An individual can apply for that program, and if awarded, they could be assisted with down payment assistance for purchasing a single family home in Warren County.
It has to be their first house.
Needs to be, yes, it's their first.
Okay.
The rebuilding together ones, however, those doesn't need to be your first house. They're generally rehabilitation. You do have a small, relatively small percentage of people living in the community that live in modular manufactured housing. Double lights and lights. Unfortunately, those things, New York State doesn't deem that they're worthy of investment because they continue to depreciate. So what's the point of putting $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to something that's not going to be worth that? So they do full home replacements. They do run those programs as well. Those are declining loan balance programs. So you are required to live in your home and maintain it for a period of time. So one of the things that we recommend is you consider whether Lake Luzerne wants to apply for a program itself. So the one exception to the CDBG program that we, and the limitations of that 51% down the line that we talked about before, is in housing. And the way that you're able to get around that is you say, well, I'm only going to serve people who are 51% of the low moderate income. So you, just by serving that population, you can do that. So the way that we would assess whether we would need to do that is you would do a survey, a community needs survey that's done in two separate ways. Number one is called a windshield survey. It's exactly what it looks like. You drive around, you look out the window, and you make a best guess on whether the home is in, and pardon the terms, these are HUD terms, whether it's dilapidated, severely substandard, or in good working shape. So we've done quite a number of those. The other way that you would do this is you would put out a request for applications. You would see who wanted to apply. You put out the income thresholds. I'll tell you right now, they're actually very generous. This is a working families program. So, you know, the firefighters and policemen and stuff like that, you know, the limits are usually like 60 to 80,000 for income. So you could consider running a program like that for yourself in this community. If you define that there's a need.
How do we find out more about that?
So the program that I am recommending is the Community Development Block Grant. There's other programs, including Affordable Housing Corporation and home grants that are also available, as well as a USDA 504 program. I recommend the CDBG program because within the program guidelines, you can pay 5% for administration and 13% for program delivery. So in terms of operating the grant, making sure you comply with all their rules and the things that happens to go with the environmental review, lead testing, asbestos testing, you know, all of that fun stuff. That all gets paid for directly from the grants. The only burden to the municipality is actually paying somebody to write the grant. Once you're awarded the grant pays for your administration, pays for actually operating the program. As opposed to Affordable Housing Corporation and home, that only gives you 5% administration, in which case you're kind of left saying, well, I need a construction professional who's going to do the scope of work, somebody else who's going to, you know, do procurement, somebody else that's gonna do all these things.
How do they determine the size of that community development block, or is there a threshold level, is there a fixed?
You could ask for as little as you want, or you could ask for up to $500,000.
Any matching funds required?
So
So the 5% administration plus 13% operating, it helps you set that target. So if you know you gotta hire somebody to run the program for you, if you don't have the capacity in-house.
and it's a great starting point, because in order to get a program up and running and to continue to have it funded, you need to demonstrate success and capacity to operate that.
Drew knows a lot about this because his company, Flatley Reed, does it for communities. But do you do it for Corn?
Yep, we run the Corn Housing Program. We've been doing that for about 20 years. We do the kind of Saratoga program. Unfortunately, there's something going on. Our Warrensburg branch we applied for Warrensburg in our last funding round. They weren't funded, but the decline letter didn't say why. And there's something going on, because in the governor's announcement, there was $33 million total that was distributed across New York State. Everybody got between 3 and 7, except the Capital District that got $100,000. So something's going on.
I wonder if it's politics.
I don't know.
So, you know, with this information from Drew and, you know, he's talking about his recommendations. There's a big thing. You remember I said 1 or 2 big things? That's a big thing to be, because we've identified housing as an issue in the town. So that is a big thing, to be able to put together a recommendations package. The town should do this and apply for this program and this is what it will cost, and this is the benefits of it. And, you know, he's mentioned 2 or 3 programs here, and it's a package, it's kind of a package deal: rehab, new homes. You know, we look at the senior housing back here that the town board is interested in developing. And so I think this is a big piece that is to this plan that is really action oriented. And we can write it to the point in enough detail that you could just take off with it and just go. You know, this is what you do. And that's what I mean. We pick, you know, 1, 2, 3 programs like that. This is what you can do. And then, you know, you're going to need a core group from here, core bunch of people that will continue it on, you know, and say, report to the town board every month, like an implementation committee, report to the town board every month, you know. There's always gonna be low hanging fruit in here, and you'll see it even you'll see it in that packet that I wrote up, that are easier to do, but I'm talking about 2 or 3 big things really are gonna make a difference, and you're gonna be proud of to move forward in the community. And I think one of them's housing,
So
frankly.
would it be our job as a committee to make sure to push that those programs are followed through in the town? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we'll write it up so that you will know what to do, but I would say somebody on the town board or in this committee has to keep going with it. You just have to, you know, or you have to pay somebody to do it. You know, that's the only way you can really keep it going. But it's not gonna.
These kind of things, lots of times get filed.
And I think that's, you know, part of it. So part of what we're hoping for you guys is, number one, we're putting out there our recommendations based on what we're seeing. We kind of have 100-foot view, and you guys are, you know, there on the ground taking a look at it. Do these recommendations make sense? So that's the first part of it. And then the next part of that is going to be, you know, geez, what really are our priorities? What is it we're going to do first? So this is one of those things. We really like CDBG grants. It's a great starting point for housing because benefits the people in your community directly. It anchors them to your community. There's these are issued as depreciating value loans. You never pay on the loan, but it basically says that I'm gonna invest $25,000 or $30,000 in your home, you're not gonna turn around and flip it. You need to live in your home for the next 5 years. And in year one, if you live there for 1 year, you're gonna pay 100%. If you live there in year 2, on your 5 year, it's gonna decrease 20% and continue to decrease 20% until the lien on your home no longer exists. And your basic requirement is that you continue to live there, you continue to pay your taxes on it, you continue to have insurance on it. You don't destroy the place. So it's really a great starting point because it pays for itself.
So is that program only applicable for owner occupied? How does this work as a rental?
So this one applies directly to owner occupied. It can be owner occupied multi-unit, meaning they can occupy part of the house and have multiple units attached to it. The CDBG in particular is for single family. There are other programs that directly target multifamily housing. Home in particular is one of them. But again, that is at a lesser rate with the expectation that perhaps the property owner is going to contribute some.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking through is you gave us a ton of statistics and numbers to think about in terms of the population and income and the housing stock. And the one that really jumps out off the page is that 77.4% income burden for rentals. So it feels like part of our, like, if we're going to build a narrative around what we're hearing about what we know about community, we should certainly hang our hat on that one. And, I'm not saying we shouldn't explore this as well, but it's something that helps that rental piece of the equation. So it feels like it makes sense.
That 18 to 24-year-old hole in that graph you showed.
Yeah, if we turn out they're all living in Glens Falls at $300 a month, then it tells us something. Right? But
so single family and owner occupied multifamily certainly falls within that. Once you get into multi-unit developments, including new construction, that kind of flips on its head. Now you guys have to fund not only for the affordable housing for young people, but in my assessment, you need it for the older people as well. You have an aging population. If you want people to continue to reside in this community, maybe keeping up on their homes a little bit much, and that's how you keep housing to be sustainable. The transfer from the people who can no longer sustain and maintain that home to the younger people who can. That's one of the benefits of housing rehabilitation is that, geez, maybe they've lived in that home and maybe they're not mortgage burdened, but geez, they've been living in this home for the last 50 years. They've got old knob and tube wiring. They haven't updated their kitchen in 50 years. They've got rotted old copper pipes. Their roof is leaking. If that person continues to live there, it's either going to fall down on them, or when they move out, it's going to be in such bad shape, nobody else is ever going to be living there again. So the next thing that I have on my opportunity list is to stabilize the rental market, provide new opportunities for young people and seniors to retain residency in the town. We've already described why, but how you would undertake that is quite a bit different. I spent a ton of time looking at this because there's a number of different models between whether you want to establish a nonprofit and have a government operated, I don't want to call it a public housing authority, but basically public housing, which is not something that's generally attractive. Or if you want to attempt to attract a developer who's going to want to invest in your community and then incentivize them. And not only incentivize them, but direct them where you want, because that's what we're doing here, we're planning for management. So you don't want them to tell you where they're going to put it. Better off if you say, here's a place, and this would be perfect, and this would be prime for development. And here's a package of all of the things that we could do for you in order to make that happen. So my first recommendation, identifying some areas that are prime for multi-unit construction to encourage development in areas that are pre-selected as well suited for expansion. These areas should account for the type of housing, the mobility of its residents and accessibility to essential services. So I don't know if this is part of the scoring criteria, or at least it used to be. You want to do senior housing, one of the things that they want to look at is what they call the walkability index. And the walkability index is, hey, grandma now and grandpa now live here. Where are they going to get their groceries? How are they going to get their pharmaceuticals or other essential services? Are they in proximity to them? What other types of services do they have? Don't know if that's still a scoring criteria, because guess what? You can have your groceries delivered to you, you can have your pharmaceuticals delivered to you. So I don't know how much that plays into it, but it's certainly a thing that you need to take into account is what is the quality of life of those individuals if you just say, cut out a piece of woods and say, here, you're gonna live here in Luzerne. The other thing you do is incentivize affordable housing developments with a pilot program. I didn't necessarily know this, but the acronym stands for payment in lieu of taxes. And that provides tax abatement on new construction or improvement projects. And you could do it either as a municipality, as a town. You could do it as a county, or you could work directly with the Warren, Washington County IDA water programs. They already have them, so you can just, typically the developer needs to pay a lawyer or hire the IDA, they can get an application and they can give tax abatement up to 10 years.
I believe Warren County has trouble giving that money away. I don't think they typically come anywhere close to what they want to do in a year.
They have a hard time giving that money away, and you know, there's sales tax abatement so that if you purchase property that is for particularly affordable housing or commercial development, they can provide grants to offset the cost of sales tax on the purchase of property. There's lots of things to do. I actually just got a phone and shop before, so they're very eager. They're both starting.
So you've got,
I've got one more.
okay,
Short-term rentals.
okay. Well, Jim's been dealing with them. Jim's been dealing with, they're developing one, an ordinance.
So one of the things that I found a particular challenge when it comes to short-term rentals is that according to New York State, there is no true definition of what a short-term rental is. So what is a short-term rental? Is a short-term rental less than a month? Is it less than 2 months? Is it less than 3 months? They have not necessarily defined that, and unless that is going to be defined within the body of zoning or other ordinances that you're going to create, including what the county tax program is going to be, that is going to be a little bit of a problem. Actually, we want to bring a pilot project with New York State Homes and Community Renewals. We're trying to create workforce housing in Malone, up in the Adirondacks, and they have hospitals and they have prisons, and people don't need to sign a full 1 year lease because they're only going to be there traveling nurses and stuff like that for 3 to 6 months, and they have no idea how they're going to deal with it. The state has no idea how they're going to deal with it. So you need to update your zoning ordinance to define and limit short-term rentals in growth areas. You want to, you know, kind of manage it. You want to say, okay, here's an area, and we understand that there's going to be continued growth of Airbnbs in this area, but we really want this to be a purely residential neighborhood. You can do that within the body of your zoning ordinances.
By the way, the public hearing is Monday at 6 o'clock. And the
Live streaming it?
Got it.
and the proposed short-term rental regulation that we put together is already on the website. If anybody wants to read it.
The other thing that you need to
Before we're
consider
into the board meeting. It's gonna be a long night.
when it comes to short-term rentals is increased use. You know, you have a lot of these homes, you're not even sure if they have septics, or if they have septics, what size they are. If they're going to be connected to public facilities, were your facilities intended for those users, or were they only intended for those people who are going to be using it maybe 1 or 2 times a month? So are your septic or sewer or your water or well or electric hookups to that area, are they sufficient for what the increased use is going to be? Because I'm familiar with Airbnbs. Typically, you know, you rent a home, you invite, you know, you're another family to go with you. You know, it's not just you, it's not just a single family home where you're maybe going out for the day. You're probably gonna be spending a bunch of time there. So, you know, if you have two families in a single family cabin. What's gonna happen with that septic? How often does it need to be pumped out? What regulations do you have in order to regulate that?
Both of those things are covered in our proposed regulation. The county will do inspections for us that will determine what the maximum occupancy is. It's based upon a couple of things. One is number of bedrooms.
Mhm.
And then we added a clause of our own that the septic system has to be inspected every 3 years by a licensed, by a certified septic inspection guy, which typically is guys that pump septic tanks and stuff like that. Doesn't have to be an engineer. That's a little bit controversial. That's gonna get some pushback from the residents around town that have these places. They gotta have this done every 3 years. Well, the county, the Department of Health recommends you pump your tank every 2 years. Airbnb or not.
Right.
That's a recommendation from law. So we went with 3 years. See if it applies.
Well, the last recommendation I have, is based on the feedback that I got from this committee, is to address municipal ordinances and enforcement to deter short-term renters from unruly or destructive behavior. So now you've got these Airbnbs. And I think we said that code enforcement is responsible for regulations, and that's done by the county, isn't that right?
Well, the first line of defense is our own zoning enforcement.
So it's zoning enforcement first and then code enforcement.
Yeah.
It seems like a heavy burden.
They recently added another part-time position to the zoning office. And he happens to be in this room.
All year.
Jim,
Party
if,
place.
if you have, people who are noisy, you know, just crazy noisy, you just call the sheriff. Right?
Probably most situations, that's who would get the first call.
What do they set?
We already had it initially, it's 11 at night until 8 in the morning, I think it is.
Yeah.
So in our short-term rental regulation, we just put the same hours in there, but that you call the cops. Basically, our proposed law is 3 strikes and you're out. You get 3 significant provable offenses and you lose your permit for a year or more.
It's a fine.
And it costs you $500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus a new position, right?
Yeah.
So I always throw this last recommendation in there. I think it's always really important, and that is to identify significant historic buildings within your community that are worthwhile promotion and restoration, and list them on the National Register. You know, whether it's, so National Register is very misunderstood. If your property is listed on the National Register, nobody's going to enforce what you can do with your property. It only provides you tax incentive to work through state historic preservation and do your repairs and your upgrades to your homes in a way that's historically sensitive to the time of the home. The only way that there's any branch of enforcement of saying, hey, you've got to do this, is if you have a local design ordinance. It's the only way that happens. So the National Register is a great tool for identifying some of your churches or other destinations and saying, this deserves to be preserved, and the homeowner who lives here maybe would benefit from up to 40% of total costs that they could get tax incentive from the state.
And the churches is important because the church funding, sacred spaces, and there's a couple of them, it's really dried up. And so if you have a church that has a you know, a 500,000 to $1 million project, repointing the stone, whatever it is, the only way you're going to be able to do it is to fundraise and apply for historic funding. And you can't get historic money from SHPO unless you are on the National Register. So it's one of a key thing to think about, for sure.
By the way, I just heard the other day that the Catholic Church property price just dropped another 50 grand.
Oh, that is a parking lot.
I heard it went up from 400
If you count the bus like that, turn it into.
I didn't hear.
Yeah, I've heard
There's
that.
a sidewalk to it.
We looked at it. Folks, yeah. Folks will do.
Everybody loves turning those into the breweries.
Oh, my gosh, it's so funny.
So this question, this developer that we're talking to, I'm talking to so far, he hasn't gone past me and Karen. Where he wants to build. He wants the town to change it to H or to residential. Right now, so that a hamlet residential, so that they can build half acre lots. Right now it has to be at 1 acre lots, but he wants more houses. Right. Now, the town just has to change the zoning, but is that something we could say, well, you know, you want to build here, 45 houses, changing the hamlet residential, and there's a good case to do it because it's right on the border. His property is right on the border of the hamlet residential anyway. That we could set certain, you know, set some regulations up, or just, that we want him to develop it. I don't know, I'm just thinking.
We expand the boundary of the hamlet.
Yeah, as long as you can defend it. I mean, as long as you're not doing it for him.
Yeah.
Right, that's
One
the
spot
key.
zoning's gonna come up.
And that was the problem with the Lake Lanier with Tom's property, was it appeared to be being done by him, especially because he put in the application.
Well,
It's a problem.
actually help him because it's going half acre.
Yeah.
It would help the town because we're gonna gain 45 new housing units.
And that's where you have to make the connection in the plan, is that we talked about, and we've talked about low income housing, enhancing it, we've talked about, senior housing. And now you're talking about stabilizing the population, increasing the students at the school. You need to keep these places stable, because otherwise, if you look at the other parts of the Adirondacks, same thing's happening. This is the exact same trend. And they don't know what to do, and they don't have the resources that you guys have. They don't have it, and they don't live 15 miles from Saratoga Springs.
Right.
And 15 miles from Glens Falls and 10 to Lake George. They don't have that. You know, remember we talked about it's quiet, quaint, people love to be here, and then they like to make little sojourns out and try different things, go into the Adirondacks, go over to the Great Escape, and then come back here to where they love to be. That's what you want to maintain. So you want to be proactive, and one of the main things besides senior and affordable housing, workforce housing, is you want to be able to bring families in and enjoy housing that you're talking about. And so you build the argument that a lot of it has gone short-term rentals. A lot of people from out of town own it, although I think in Luzerne, there's a resident that owns a lot of the short-term rentals. Is that right? You heard that?
There's a lady,
There's a,
yeah,
The one that came to the public hearing.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
she owns 2 or 3, I think, and she manages a bunch more. You know who it is? You know who it is? Boy, she talked for an hour at one board meeting.
But
I think I never forget her name.
I don't know. when-
So anyway, it is, you know, you have all kinds of trends going on that are Buck being able to be a fresh family coming and saying, I love this community. There's so many things I like about it. I want to come in and move. And you've got to remove the obstacles and provide them different options for living. So that's the argument. And being that it's right on that zoning. Are we talking about the same place, Tom's? Is this still Tom's?
No, this is school.
What'd you say?
Last thing, wrong.
West Tom Reed. So it's not Tom Reed's, it's another one.
There's another one, it's almost at the school, it's halfway between here and the school.
Okay.
And it's, you know, back in behind 1 street, behind 9N.
I'm the Legion Hall.
Yeah, that one. And,
Oh, that little road there, yeah.
well, behind that, a ton of properties. And they came in front of the board May 6th. of 2006.
Oh.
And
You know that?
it's less than 50 acres, because you don't want to go over 50 acres. I guess there's some threshold once you get that far. Plus, you gotta go under 50 homes too, that's why they picked 45. Because when I was looking at the development, I said, originally they wanted to put like a little park here with playground for the people with development. They thought that was a good idea. But it's gotta change to Hamlet residential in order for them to do that.
Are you talking like where Boys Field used to be, like behind? the
That's
Wesleyan
irrelevant.
Church?
That would- yeah, that's what it is.
Used to be Boys Field, we used to have
There's-
those
there's,
houses up there.
There's a road, or there's houses up on in the front of the night.
Right, on Wesleyan, so you have Wesleyan Church and that road that goes down,
Yes.
and there's a field back there, yeah, that used to be Boys Field.
So I don't know what's gonna come of it, but.
There used to be carnivals there.
Were there?
Yes. Big carnivals, big carnivals, I remember through my whole life, there was carnivals there, it was called.
So is it just a matter of zoning?
That's part of it. All right, that's definitely a big. Plus the APA and there's a whole bunch of.
Was there talk about a conservation development?
No. Regular houses.
You don't even have the space, there's not enough for that, or,
That is.
Conservation design, like a cluster.
yeah, like where you give up, you have your half acre lots, but devote such to a park or natural space.
Everything, we're all gonna consider the PDD process.
You know.
Well, you mentioned that, and I didn't know what that was. Karen did.
Yeah.
They were talking, what is this?
So you're saying that Guido owns it, Guido Passarelli? His children. I just saw his house, went up for sale, Lake George.
This one.
Is it?
3 million too.
That was $1 million too? One on the lake says 7 million. Well, it's weird because the house next to his is his son Vincent's. They're identical houses. It's like they saved money on an architect.
That's exactly what, here, the brick house that's here in Nine, that guy used to own.
Yeah.
He also owned one up on Gage Hill, and they were the exact same.
How we get there?
Exact same houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. We didn't.
It was-
Yeah, the house is actually look like famous.
Yeah.
They look brick. They look like famous. They still do this one.
Just make all the decisions in one spot. The two of you.
So weird.
And I don't know, right now, nothing's happening. We just came to the house and hoping that maybe we could work something out. But he still has to deal with the ADA and a lot of wetlands around there. So behind it, not-
Behind. Yeah. Well, so,
Would be nice, yeah.
yeah, we should probably talk to him individually and see what he really wants to do about it, because what are you gonna say in the plan unless you knew what he exactly wants to do? But if it's a mere zoning change and there's really no reason not to, like, if I look at this, map. We are looking at, if people can see it. We're still in the hamlet, aren't we? Where are we? Here's the hamlet. Oh, here's Lake Luzerne, so. No, we're out of it. Here's the lake. So it's up in here. Is it in this?
Yeah,
What zone did you say it was in?
Right now, it's RE.
Oh, RE. R resort.
You have to have 1 acre. You go to Hamlet residential HR, then you can do the habit.
Well, that's a lot of this.
910 technically is HR, Hamlet residential, but behind the house behind that. Changes the Hamlet or residential resort.
and it backs up to some national grid cleared property, right? That's the problem right there. And I think part of that is APA protected. There's a little
Right,
strip of green space, and what do we do with that? If you cut down those trees, then you'll see the power lines and they're clear cut, so. it's an issue.
So there's a lot of things he's got to,
Hurdles.
where one of them for us is changing it to Hamlet residential.
Well, since you don't, since you really don't know,
maybe what we do is we at least put in the plan, consider the feasibility of changing the zoning here to encourage more single-family housing, new single-family housing in the community to accommodate new young families. Something like that, but affordable, yes, and that's what you have to do with the APA, and at least you'll get the foundation in here. But I don't know that you can get much detail. I don't know that you can make that decision by the time we do this plan to, you'll know enough. But I think in Lake Veneer, you could probably do that. Now Tom Reed wanted to take this zone here and push it into this light yellow. I think that was what it was. I'd have to reread
He was trying to cut down the acreage, I think it's what, 2.5 acres or something, or what?
He was trying to get the town to get behind asking the APA to switch theirs.
Right.
Mhm.
The town's density is acceptable to them, the APA's is not.
Mhm.
And I forget the numbers, it's something like that.
I think if the town said
1.3 to 1 or something like
I
that.
agree with it, with the APA, they might change it, so that you could do it.
I actually think you'd be able to get that through.
The APA wanted to see it as part of a comprehensive plan, I think is
They did, it's right in the record.
right.
Along with there's no environmental issues with it. And
But the
So-
people that live around there don't want it.
well, they were concerned about traffic and what have you, but I think didn't you have 45 houses planned, or was it less than that?
There was quite a few there.
There's quite a few, somewhere 40, some 45.
There was a couple different numbers.
But honestly, up in there in that area,
I thought there were wetlands that were behind the development that would potentially drain into the lake Venera.
yeah, but it wouldn't, I don't think where he was planning the housing was gonna impact it.
Primarily, they want to see more people, more houses. They bought there because they wanted a lot of space and
Yeah,
nobody around there living around.
yeah.
If
You mean NIMBY? NIMBY principle?
if I remember right, and I might be wrong, but the last time he was turned down, I believe it was because the town never responded to the APA's requests.
That's right. Company.
Does
Yes.
that sound familiar?
Yeah, they had a public hearing, kind of, they had people at the meeting that
Yeah,
were against it.
Yeah, you have to, if you're gonna get something like that through, well, you have to go by the book, make sure you've covered all your bases. And let people speak, but actually encourage people who are for it to come as well. And you have to have a really good presentation. Tom Reed did not have a good presentation. That was not professional. He did it himself. The maps were hard to read. It was hard to understand what he was trying to do. And that, to get it through, honestly, I've done it before. You've got to cover all your bases and be very specific with the APA and don't have any. And I believe truly that they did not think the town was fully behind it.
right. They responded to his first pass. Supposedly, this is before my time on this board, but they responded asking the town for some more information. And I know for a fact the town never responded. So that was interpreted as a lack of support for it. And I believe it just kind of fizzled at that point.
See, my main takeaway from this conversation is that there's a huge number of barriers, not just here with zoning and planning, but also with APA and other regulatory agencies. So, imagine the opportunity that you could create if you were to pre-clear those boundaries and say, here in this area, you can build up to 200 multifamily residential houses. Units, by the way. And it's pre-approved by planning, it's pre-approved by zoning, it's been pre-approved by APA. Somebody who has somebody.
In my opinion, that's definitely when the developers are staying away from our town. I built a single family house 10 years ago. I had to talk to 5 different agencies.
Mhm.
It was I put a conforming use house on the lot, but I had to think about income, I had to think about somebody, because it's considered a navigable water. I live on the Hudson, I forget who that was, Army Corps or something, APA, town and county.
So all those barriers.
To build a house.
If
Build a
I'm,
house on
if I'm
5
looking to
acres.
do that, well, guess what, I'm gonna go. South,
Yeah.
I'm outside the Adirondack Park, and I'm gonna bring in, East Greenbush or,
Yeah,
something like that.
startup cost to be half.
Exactly.
Well, Dane Morton owns Adirondack Adventures, he went through a lot, but he brought his stuff to the planning board, we followed every procedure, went through everything. There were people against it, they didn't want it, and, the big thing was noise and sound. I pointed out that the place across the street from Dane's place is a park, and they can run generators.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was conforming use. Right, you wanted to put in a business that was allowed in that zone.
The only problem is like the height or something
Yeah.
of the line, but he
Yeah.
stayed down within the height, did everything.
And he had, I was chairing the zoning board, he had to go this. For that,
So the other approach, so that you are doing this in a fair way. Between Tom's, and he claimed to me that he's done with this, he's not going forward with it, but Tom, maybe somebody else will, you're a new guy. And we could look at other areas in the community that could expand, or where you could change the zones. So that you're doing it comprehensively, you're looking for areas for single family growth. And you're looking for impediments to that. And because these zoning lines are all, whether it's APA or local zoning, it's all based upon ancient history. We've changed the way we live, the patterns of land use have changed. And I guess what I would say that's not necessarily part of this project, but we can make a recommendation to do a build out analysis and zoning recommendations to make more consistent the where new housing could be, like that.
didn't Doug Frost tell us there's 2 zones in the town of Lake George?
2 zones. There's more than 2.
Very few. We've got what, 8 or 9?
During the analytics
Here's somebody who doesn't want to do anything, but as I was looking at the town map. The market, 3/4 of it commercial, the back part is residential, but you can't do anything. It's insane. Yeah, part of their property is not commercial, you cannot do anything with that part.
Well, that doesn't make sense.
Same with Tony's garage, little garage, I mean, it's like, why did they do this?
You're starting to hit upon why I said earlier, I really think they want to redo the zoning map.
That's just been a very issue here, I think. That's been,
People think that the plan for this committee is going to be in the zoning map.
what they do.
Oh, yeah, no, that's kind of like, you guys talk about it, you guys talk about it. No, we're getting.
And I,
That's what I kind of.
It should be the first thing.
Well, I know with like Worth Lake Diner, I mean, how many, I know of at least 2 that went in there to try to do something different with that and then fell through because of
and
zoning.
that, I might be wrong, but what I heard is that kind of billions.
Yeah, yes,
Way back. Dining, and I'm not aware. It's my understanding that the variance goes with the property. It's supposed to not with the owner. So when somebody bought Fourth Lake Diner, they can continue operating as a diner. Once they,
I thought the septic tank went there, and you were all set to do it, and you just didn't want.
yeah, but what is the zone?
well, that's it. We actually looked into buying that part. We were gonna put our business there and then, and they said restaurant or residential, and we ended up going buying the old restaurant.
Yeah.
And then I know of like 2 restaurants,
Said
2 different,
restaurant because that whole variance.
yeah.
Anything else has got to be compliant with the zone. It's an item.
So if you look at your zoning map, it's not, it was drawn moons ago, many moons ago, and it does not have your lots on it, right? You know, that's a fairly modern thing, to overlay your zoning on your lots. Most of those zoning lines were just 500 feet from the.
Or
From the corner, yeah, they're pretty random. And when you put the lots on there, the lot lines, you go, oh my God, and that's where you find out that your lot is split with 3 zones or something like that. So this is a huge effort to figure out where that is, and I think that you could certainly ask the county, Warren County, to digitize this for you on top of the layer of lots. That would give you more information. Otherwise, how are you going to figure out where all these lots are that are being cut up?
didn't they offer support to us? Quite a
Yeah,
lot?
they've given us, they did all these maps.
Already doing all county.
Yeah, they do this, and that's part of their, and I think that is a distinctive recommendation that we could make, is that we have your zoning map digitized on top of the lot lines in the community. And then you have enough information to actually make some decisions about. But otherwise, you
recommended. Dealing with all of this, right, in here?
Land use and zoning regulations.
yeah,
Or-
more generally, I didn't say that in particular,
Yeah, yes.
to do.
Well, it was remove unnecessary object in zoning code. That's for redevelopment of dilapidated and vacant properties and development of restaurants. So that starts to get there.
Yeah, so we could broaden that
Yep.
for sure, that recommendation. So we talked about housing and how that is for your residential. We talked about a playground and making it more recreationally sound. That would bring in more tourists, making it an area that they understand where the trails are, all of that. And I think that a third thing would be zoning. That's a huge recommendation. And maybe a fourth thing is something that Drew also did, which was an interpretive plan. All right, for the community, building off of First Wilderness Heritage. Because we want to bring in enough tourists just to get a restaurant and to bring enough people into town, because it is a tourism community. And have a stable residential base. So I'm just thinking about certain big ideas that you could follow up on that will meet the goals, that we're talking about here. Get it or not? Makes sense? You just pick some, and then, you can also pick off some of the smaller things, but sort of makes sense. So you have an interpretive plan, and you'll read that in here. Drew. I put most of what Drew said in here about that.
Expanded that as well, so we didn't want.
Okay.
One note I had on page 3, the Route 9 corridor, like the first bullet there, number 1, I just wrote expand that, which is consistent with what we're saying here tonight.
Yes.
It said develop a corridor study, the Lake Luzerne Hamlet, the 9 I'm thinking of, I'm one of them, the jamokes that sit up here. They need more specifics than that to envision or possibly even comprehend
So my.
what the recommendation is.
So.
They don't have time to study this stuff.
Yeah, the context for that was that, so as I mentioned. My team came up and, some of them had never been here before, so it was a new experience for them. And as we're coming up 9N, Spring Sky, so we come up 9N before them. And they're like, so are we in Lake Luzerne yet? As you cross over that bridge and you get into essentially the hamlet area, there's nothing to define where you are. And coming in, first off, there's green space on either side of the road, but nothing that's ever been done with it to make it welcoming, pretty, nice. So in terms of community identity and recognizing where you are, I don't really notice that you crossed over from Hadley to Lake Luzerne or even in Warren County. And for me, the biggest thing is, well, I know that I crossed the river and that's the county that matter. And it comes from both, that's from both ends as well, so.
I thought there were signs, and there's signs of all the other.
There's like one sign, right?
There's like.
Well, there are standard blue signs, like it's there. You're down there's nothing on that end.
Coming from Lake George, there was one.
Yeah, there is, and over the Glens Falls Mountain, there's one.
It's too many miles down.
There's one, so I'm surprised there's not one.
There is something there, but
It didn't leave an impression.
it didn't leave an impression, it didn't, it's like, welcome to Lake Luzerne, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what is Lake Luzerne, what is
It
it?
was irrigated in the highway department garage.
Right,
Right.
I mean, there's no flowers, plantings, or anything to make it express,
By 10 property.
at the time it was on mode, because it was.
So one of our consultant to design the sign. And they talked about it for 4 or 5 hours, 3 or 4 board meetings as to what it was gonna say. This is back in the 80s, they came up with a nice place to live, work, and play. And they made a pretty little sign. I was down the other day going with the doctor, and those signs have all been changed now. They took out the live, work, and play.
So when I-
It's okay, it's there.
So in looking at some of the previous developments for Lake Luzerne, I reviewed the interpretive plan that was developed by First Wilderness Heritage Corridor. I wish Pam was here so she could speak to it, because she was part of that. I now call it the Ode to the Saratoga and North Creek. So basically excluded Lake Luzerne because you didn't have a rest. Which was very interesting. However, within the interpretive scenario, it defined a theme or a brand for Lake Luzerne. I thought it was kind of clever. It is where the rivers and people meet.
Yeah, I saw that.
I thought that was kind of clever. It spoke to the history to me. It spoke to, tourism as a destination. I thought it was fairly clever. And thought that it's something that could carry through, something that you can, one of the observations that we made when we were even walking in the downtown area, in the area of the Adirondack Folk School, is you have a lot of different banners. There's no consistency on them. So, how do you create a community identity that people recognize that they're here and that this is a unique place?
Yeah, I noticed that phrase in here as well. That's pretty good. I mean, it does harken to the history, and we want people to come here and meet up and do things.
I noticed something today, just, and I know it's been this way, so. The sidewalk next to Mill Park. Is not shoveled, plowed, nothing, so there's no access for anybody to walk through there, and right now it's so pretty, like. So pretty right there to go down like to living water, but. You can't even get up it because of that shovels are loud or anything, I'm like, we have those little machines. That they go through and do sidewalks with.
Well, one of the recommendations that I made here is within this very small and dense area, you have your anchor, the Adirondack Folk School. People are coming from quite a while away to come there. And then you have the museum across the street, you have the Mill Museum, you have that trail that connects the Kinnear Museum with the Mill Museum, sort of call the trail. So, you have that perfect opportunity to create that as a bigger attraction and connect all of those things together. And to me, the other
Lighting would be great there.
lighting would be great. The other thing that we identified in our walking tour, which I thought was really unique, is remember we were walking by the Adirondack Folk School, because that's where we started, and we said, well, here's the Riverside Trail. First off, there's a road cut for it, as if there's a driveway, and it's paved about, 10 feet past. Then it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't tell me anything. So is it really a trail? Or is it just, next door? You get to the backside of the park and you have access to the river. It's beautiful.
Well, if you go in the trail, I went a couple times.
Yeah.
Once in a while, you see a little sign about a plant or a tree, but I mean, then oh, I'm on the right trail. But if you had more, like you said, this is where the trail starts. And I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, it needs to connect in the south, as you come out of the woods, It just ends. And there's the picnic tables over there, the tennis court. So it just needs to be a connector over here to here. And I think what you're talking about is it was designed for a kayak takeout. All right, so, but there's no signage that tells you that. But if you're walking the trail, you can see where the kayak takeout is. And it's not easy. I couldn't do it. I mean, it's really a tough spot to take out. And a crossover in Hadley, they have a takeout that's equally horrible. So if you're coming down the Hudson River and
That's
you want,
much further up.
you've got to get out.
The happy is much further.
You need to get out, yeah, you need to get out towards the River Road there.
Yeah, but Hadley's takeout is much, it's further up. And there's
Yes.
actually like a sign, yes.
So
That's
this
a
would be the last ditch. We call it the last ditch takeout. But it's hard, I think that's all my head could put together is that's the kayak takeout. It was the beginning of an idea. And then, you pull your car down there because. And then you pull out your,
Who would know that?
who would know that?
Who would know that?
We need to be as specific as we can
Yeah,
And promote it.
to figure out how to make this stuff happen.
yes.
And you need to promote it, and if you were to take the Adirondack Folk Schools and anchor it and create this bigger experience, go to the Canary Museum, go to the schoolhouse, go to the Mill Museum. And coordinate it in some way, and well, maybe you've just captured somebody for an entire day. And what did we talk about when you're gonna capture somebody for the day? Well, they're gonna need something to eat, and then you've created demand for a restaurant. And that's really the only reason we're here, right?
That's the mission.
I have a question on that note. Is it generally discouraged to reach out to, let's just say, the big players in town, like we have a Rachel Ray here, who, as far as I know, doesn't have a restaurant. A lot of these TV chefs start a restaurant. So we talk about making a big splash. Someone reach out to her, hey, open up a restaurant. She's from Lake George. She wouldn't respond. She wouldn't respond. She could at least build us.
I asked that same question.
You did, okay, all right.
But I do think
Good
that
idea, but good luck.
Yeah.
we should talk, part of it should be talking to, let's see, maybe, I'm trying to think of the name of the brew pub place. Well, Bradley up in Bolton Landing, he's always looking to expand locations, and he's got an incredible spot in Bolton Landing. Is it the Bolton Brew Pub? Oh, that's easy. And the store in Chestertown, that wonderful little store that sells fishing, and hiking, and good food.
Oh, there used to be
What's it
it's
called?
the old town hall, right?
Oh, I don't know.
It's right there.
Yeah, what's it called though? What's
It's
that
good
place?
food.
I can't think of it. It's got a little ice cream.
Yeah.
Next, I can't think.
It's near the river.
Yeah.
You should go to the town hall.
You can
See that?
tell these people, go see them and say, would you be interested?
Nice squeaky floors.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's good, great gloves, getting good stuff there. But it's hard to make that happen unless you have the foundation already set, like idea that, town's gonna buy this property and all that. I mean, to make big things happen is complicated, but we'll choose between 2 and 4, probably 4 projects that go. We won't overwhelm the town board with too many things.
I think one of the big things that hurts any businesses coming in, people go online and buy stuff. And, well, I go to the store and I'll just look on Amazon.
Although that's changing. Bloomberg just reported that because of COVID, people want to get out. The stores now are, especially for the holiday season, we're looking to have a lot more people going out into the stores to get out. Just to get out and see things and see decorations and stuff for what a bite to eat. And so I think COVID related, that's a changing thing. But yeah, a lot of people, they do order online, they do shop online, but I think we're seeing a different season this year anyway.
And our local restaurants, I'm not gonna say Longhorn and Meadow are doing very well.
Yeah, people want to get
I
out.
mean, we're all going to on the Longhorn tomorrow night and you had to have reservations. Really, like, they're thinking it's gonna be like,
Like any night you go, it's
yeah, I
like
mean, it's,
busy.
Meadow Friday night was jam packed.
Yeah, see, that's.
Yeah, the flyers they sent out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
The folk school, the gift shop there, we're having our best year ever.
Yes.
So I think there's a buy local thing going on. People like to find it handcrafted. And
So we're just over the other night, just went over 1,000.
yeah, so we've had 1,000 students this year for the first time.
That's great.
We got a whole lot
Things
of them.
like, things seem to be doing well here. If we get snow, like,
Mhm.
those businesses up there are gonna do great, but we have nothing down here.
You have.
As far as restaurants.
Nice, you can
Now that walk-
place you could walk or play pickleball.
Yes.
And you've created an experience and then you know,
Pickleball will happen.
they're gonna come.
Pickleball's
Will happen. They'd have to kill me for it not to happen. But there is, at the entrance to the Northway, the big building up there, that's gonna be a fishing outdoor store place, right?
Is that the one that's just moving from the outlet? I think it's only
Yes.
right, but, yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's displaced the Adirondacks Mountain Club store.
Right,
Just there.
right.
So we could have something that complements that, and they're entrepreneurs, they may want to come over here, but what if we had something that's kind of store that complements it? Like Crossroads in Chestertown, just thought of it. Crossroads is a cute place, or something like it, and they sell food. You know, what if you had something there that looked over the river? In the back, you had a big deck and, well, I mean.
Well,
it's
they're
just
selling
not
outdoor
cheap.
gear, I mean, we could all fishing
White water
stuff we could
stuff,
do,
I
I mean,
think-
that already happens out here, you
Yeah.
know.
And you could cross market by selling Adirondack Folk School materials there. You know, I think most of these new entrepreneurs have figured out that you have to cross market to be successful. We always be thinking about.
I think the guy that's next to Dollar General up in Hadley, that little, it's gonna be like an antique. And he's bringing a food truck and he's gonna put the cornhole and stuff out and it's supposed to be kind of like hang out for the day. So I don't know if that's gonna happen,
Did
but
you say cross the bridge?
yeah, right, yeah,
and it's.
Yeah, Ed Reynolds.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed Reynolds and his wife, right?
so it's supposed like, I think they're thinking outside the box. and-
Yes, yeah, they are. They really are.
Well, we have a great little golf course there too. Yeah. I mean, it really is, it's a nice golf course, it's fun.
Yeah.
If somebody put a brewery in here, we would do things.
That's what I'm saying, how I'm taking. Whole bar in my property.
So, lovely place, with the Catholic churches, they got a parking lot.
Where the pastor lived, so there's that entire facility, the church and
The brewery that's on 140.
the pastor's house.
That little brewery that's,
Sing it back.
I don't even know what it used to smell like. It used to sell wood stoves.
Yes.
Oh,
We sat there, not knowing really what it was.
Yeah.
They don't even brew their own beers. They have 500 beers. And it's all in the freezer, they're all in the coolers. They have a big fire pit out front. They brought in a pizza truck.
Oh, the place right there. on-
This place was packed.
See, people are trying to get out.
This place was.
You have to get somebody to do this in the county.
No, they got the place. Yeah.
Because it's all hand.
Yes, the town would have to help out.
So the place like that's open up on Island, it's so freaking, it's been in the line.
Thinking outside the box.
Number one, eliminating barriers to commercial development such as we've talked about, you know. Number two, once you establish the need, once you identify that there's a demand there, the people will come, but you need to eliminate those barriers first. And then in terms of helping out, I mean, there's micro enterprise grants and other stuff like that, that can assist with paying for equipment or upgrades, of course, a restaurant's gonna need hood vents and, fire suppression systems and stuff like that. So, that's certainly an opportunity. New York Main Street is part of that, but I don't know if you'll necessarily be eligible for that. ESD has a ton of funding for startups. Sometimes it's low interest loans, sometimes it's, grant money, but, the other thing is, USDA Rural Business Development Program, which is a little bit harder, but, it's a federal program. Haven't digitized yet, so it's all paper applications. But they're a great program as well, particularly for type of business like Nettle Meadow, where you're doing the farm to table type stuff, which seems to be a great thing for your community, particularly with Nettle Meadow. It seems to be working elsewhere as well. Places like 9 miles east in Saratoga, looks great for them.
So maybe a recommendation, easy pick in here is to put on our website, on the town's website, a section, a folder for entrepreneurs or business development, and give them some of these website, these links, right? You don't have to put it all on there, but here's some links for you. And give them a push, because Drew spent a lot of time pulling this together. It's hard to figure it all out, and it keeps changing. And so keeping up with all this and understanding who gets what income category, what the match is very difficult, and people just give up. So if you can provide them with a little, cheat sheet on the website, that would be, Gene hears from somebody or you hear from somebody, say, look at the website, we've got some information for you there.
What would be even better is if we could provide some assistance, whether, somebody like Drew under contract to the town who helps companies, so they see that and you get a snapshot, you're like, well, I don't know to start talking to someone who's been through it. I mean, the folk school has done pretty well at getting grants to our history. In the last couple of years, we focused a lot more on it, and I have some experience, my wife has some experience, and we're just finding all kinds of opportunities that we didn't really see before because we didn't know. And so today we got another $30,000 grant from the NISCA, New York State Council on Drugs. And it was something that we kind of had looked at before years ago, but never really approached them, and they're going to help fund other stuff for us. And then we worked with a grants organization, the Cloud Splitter Foundation, who gave us some funding for the blacksmith shop, but also then had a program where they lent one of their grant people to us to help identify other granting agencies. And she put us on to the National Endowment for Humanities, which we had never considered or even really knew anything about. And we've got a grant pending there that if it comes through, would pay for a good chunk of the new building. And it's right, it's right. Yeah.
You build a new building, is it going to be on site, or
That's the hope. And
you have enough room there without losing?
it's challenging. There's two different tax parcels that come together in the little parking lot. And so we're working our way through the town process to make those changes and make something happen. But it's clear we need more space than we have now. Got the Lake Shore space. But yeah, there really are. There's all kinds of programs, and you just developed a bunch of new ones to me tonight. My world, I live more in the renewable energy, that space, and there's a ton of money coming. I mean, if the town ever wanted to put solar on this building, now's the time, because with the new provisions from the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a monetization for nonprofits and municipalities. Instead of having to have a tax burden where you get a tax credit for putting solar on your roof, you can actually get it monetized. So you get a payment. And so you no longer have to be a tax paying entity in order to qualify for that 30% off your top line cost. So there's stuff like that, if we kind of mapped out the needs and what the programs are, but you almost have to have somebody to facilitate it, because it's just hard, figuring out all of the grant agencies and all of their procedures. I spend a lot of my time in it and, but I know the energy side of it, not that much more than I know economic development. So,
It's
yeah,
definitely a learning process and, and one of the things that I always try to do is point you to existing resources. The Warren County EDC, the Warren Washington County IDA. They all have the mission to promote commercial and, development within your community. And what resources do they have? What information do they have to bring to you guys?
yeah, because there really are, in like small business development, so that guide you through writing the proposal and tune it up so it actually has a good shot. Yeah.
Maybe, I like that idea. Maybe we could, the town could put together some kind of program where we would pay a consultant to have them on retainer, so to speak, for an agreed amount of money. And when somebody came to us and says, we want to put in 50 houses. If the town board was so inclined to approve it, then we could let them use so many dollars of consulting money or something.
Yeah, maybe there's a shared resource like that, but
Yeah,
that could be really interesting.
I mean, when I started my business a long time ago, I felt the same way. I knew this money was supposedly out there. I had no idea how to tap it.
I mean, that like over my elderly, mother-in-law, there's money out there for, the seniors, that unless you have somebody doing it, there's no way they're getting to it. It's, I've been going through loopholes and finding the things. You definitely need somebody. I heard that our senior center here, that Barb Mitchell does a good job helping our seniors find that, but there's money out there for them.
Yeah, there's real value in that. I mean, there's just so much of the federal funds, especially floating around right now, that some of the agencies are having a tough time spending it. So.
She's got a new refrigerator, she got an insulation component for the basement, but it takes somebody to actually fill out to do your paperwork.
That's a really good point, because also in the IRA, there's all of these provisions for homeowners, where if you want to get better insulation, if you want to change their heating system to something more efficient, that's another piece of improving the housing stock here and making it more affordable. So maybe, you can use some of that money to pay for a better furnace that's going to end up cutting your monthly expenses significantly and let you stay here.
Should I be looking at some of that stuff for the town on this building?
There's definitely stuff available, and especially they're doing this direct pay option now on.
Talk sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
My solar bill, my home was $17.78 this month.
I have too many trees.
Wow.
Yeah, the solar is.
And we pay the solar company, but it was like $40. It changes every month, but it's like $40.
The municipality be interested in a municipal solar, community solar project?
One of the times I was over at the transfer station, I was looking at the field that, used to be the dump and saying landfills are one of the eligible uses now for solar.
It's one of the most successful models for it. There's an amazing model for doing that in Saratoga Springs on Wyville Road.
Yeah, and there's one company that's done it up in Saranac Lake, so inside the boundary of the park. So and I did actually talk to them. There's a challenge with the wires basically that go there.
3 phase wires.
Posting capacity is too low and it costs too much to run new wires but the site would be perfect. It's wide open. There's no shade. Yeah, and again, now with the change in the IRA, that extra 30% becomes eligible for the nonprofits and for government entities. So it's a good opportunity.
All right, so we're probably done.
Yeah.
Okay,
More ways than one.
Right.
more ways than one, I'm
How
sure.
would you like feedback? I was just gonna, because I went through and I made some just notes.
Oh, Well,
Is there, do you want us to?
yeah, I'd like you to email me
Yeah.
any feedback that you have, and the question is, that. And if you want to keep working on it, take a fresh copy.
My comments are not profound, so don't get all excited.
Put your name on it.
Great, is this meeting wasn't open to public comment?
Yes,
I'm assuming it is, or
it is.
is there had an attendee that just wanted me to read something off real quick? They went unnamed, but if the town aligned its zoning with the APA, it would be easier for people to get permits approved. It would also protect the integrity of the quote quaintness of the town, which is why people come here. They don't come here for subdivisions.
Thank you. So how do you feel about having a meeting in December? Which is coming up. Do you wanna have a meeting in December? Do you wanna skip December? And. You know, I think we need to talk about this zoning. You need to let me think about it a little bit and roll around town some Sunday afternoon. But what do you feel about it?
My two cents is it depends more on you, as to what you'll have
And
to work on.
Oh, no, I see, yeah.
No, I don't care.
but if we, I think like a month from now, or that's the week of Christmas.
It is, yeah,
So,
yeah,
Yeah, we don't want to know.
yeah,
yeah, I think I would go.
But Christmas Eve, that's when you do my shopping.
Well, I think probably we should go into January and January 1st is a Sunday,
Third is a Tuesday.
3rd is a Tuesday. And that's fine with me if you're. You wanna try the 3rd? Stay at 6. And
Can we keep it to 2 hours, hopefully?
yeah.
I would stop talking to you.
I just think that's.
Yeah.
I'm done now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everything. Oh, my God.
No, thank.
You know where I'm having my Thanksgiving?
No.
Was it?